Hey, what's up, everybody? If you appreciate the format and you appreciate what we're doing here, then make sure you contribute to the Cash App, make sure you contribute to the PayPal, make sure you donate to the Super Chat. It's only you and your contributions that keep this thing going. Thanks. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Uncle D, and I'm back at you guys again with a very special broadcast. Tonight, we're going to talk about Hannibal Barca, the great general. He was a Carthaginian general, Carthage being in North Africa. He was a statesman who commanded the Carthaginians' main forces against the Roman Republic during the Second Punic War. He was widely considered one of the greatest military commanders in human history. His father, Hamilcar Barca, was a leading Carthaginian commander during the First Punic War. That said, Hannibal was one of our great heroes. Now, before we get started, I want to make sure everybody understands that, hey, I'm here to do this because I appreciate you, and I hope you appreciate this information. What we're going to do is we're not just going to read a history lesson. We're going to see what we as Black American men can call from one of our great African heroes, Hannibal. Now, here's what I want you guys to do. If you appreciate what I'm doing, make sure you contribute to the Super Chat, the Cash App, and the PayPal. The links are here at the bottom. And, there's some great mysteries about Hannibal. Hannibal basically took 40,000 men across what really is tantamount to 2 continents. And he did that at a time when we didn't have cars or cell phones. And he also had elephants with him. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to show you guys just the distance that Hannibal Barca traveled. If I can pull this map up, because I want you to see what this man did, what this Black man from Africa did, okay? So I'm gonna pull this screen up. I want you guys to check this out. The screen is there. This man traveled from here, where this icon is, from Spain, Cartagena, Spain, all the way up along this coast, all the way up through here, over the Alps. These are Alps. These are huge mountain range. This is Gaul. Gaul is now modern day France. This is Spain. All the way over these, then traveled down into Italy, right? Then from here, crossed over an uninhabited swamp, all the way down. And from this point, he just waged war against all the armies that Rome could throw at him, just decimated them. And then he finally took a boat home back to Carthage. But for the most part, fellas, this is who this brilliant man was. And the History Channel did a special on him. Now, there's a dispute as to whether or not he was Black African, North African, Southern, Sub-Saharan African. He was an African man. That's the bottom line. And any depictions of him showing him, with your European features was something that was carved of him by Europeans sometime after he died, 200-300 years after he died. Mind you, this is before a time when they had photographs, so there was nobody for even know what he even have looked like 200 years after he passed away. But the bottom line is the History Channel depicts our great hero, Hannibal Barca, as this black man here that you see. And so I want you guys to let's get that understood first. And, you know, just so you can have a visual in your mind before we get started. But either way, nevertheless, let's go ahead and get this thing going. And you guys, if you have any questions as we go along, let's go ahead and continue. Let's put the questions in the chat room. But in the meantime, Hannibal lived between 247 and 181 BC. He's a Carthage general and a statesman who commanded Carthage's main forces. Hannibal lived during a period of great tension between the Western Mediterranean basin, triggered by the emergence of the Roman Republic, and which was over in Italy. And they fought, Carthage and Rome fought what was called the First Punic War. Rome actually won that war. And, you know, Hannibal's father made him pledge that he would never be a friend of Rome. This is his dad made him say, you hate these people until the day we die, you never be their friends. So I want you to begin to look into the mindset of this man, okay? He had then made his famous military exploit carrying, so during the Second Punic War broke out in 218 BC, after Hannibal's attack on Sangam. Now at that time, the Romans and the Carthaginians had a peace treaty which said, hey, look, you don't fight us, we won't fight you. Rome said, but Hannibal said, hell with that. And he went ahead and crossed that line into Saguntum, which is a place in Spain. And he attacked them. So he took the offensive and he attacked them. Now, the Romans said, hey, look, we don't have a problem with you Carthaginians. We just want you to send us this upstart, this Hannibal guys, send him to us so that we can discipline him. And the Carthaginians said, no, we won't do that. He's a son of Carthage, and we want Carthage, and we won't do that. But anyway, it was at that point he made his famous military exploit, carrying a war to Italy by crossing the Alps. This is an amazing thing. This man crossed. You can barely cross. Imagine pedaling your bike up a mountain, okay? Now imagine having, 40 elephants with you, okay? This is what he did. He crossed the Alps with North African war elephants. In his first few years in Italy, he won a succession of dramatic victories at Trivia, Lake Trasimene, Cannae. I mean, he just literally, he basically whooped the Romans in their own backyard, in their living room. Right? He distinguished himself for his ability to determine his opponent's respective strengths and weaknesses and to plan battles accordingly. Hannibal's well-planned strategies allowed him to conquer several Italian cities. They just roamed around these cities, right? They just roamed around the peninsula of Italy. And they did this for about 15 years, and it was nothing that the Romans could do. They just went around there and just pillaged and burned, and they even got some of the Gauls and some of the Germanic people, which were white people. These were the typical white people, because here's the thing. The Italian people, like the Greeks, like other people in the Mediterranean, they would not be considered white. Okay, they would be considered Mediterranean, which means they were mixed. You don't know how, even Sicily now, they don't know how Italian they really are, because they got all that African blood. Okay, so but either way, he roamed that peninsula for 15 years. They sent all these generals at him, Fabius Maximus, all these guys that were sent at him. And it wasn't until Scipio Africanus said, well, you know what, we got to get this guy out of here. What we're going to do is we're going to put him on the defensive by going and invading Carthage. And so they basically sailed over there, and there was a battle at a place called Zama. And so Hannibal had to rush home and deal with that. After the war, Hannibal successfully ran for office. He became a statesman. He wrote books about war and war strategy. He was regarded as one of the greatest military tacticians in history. People still read his books now. He's compared to with Philip of Macedon, who's Alexander the Great's father, also Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Scipio Africanus. All these people he's compared. This is what this African general is held out as. The thing about his name Hannibal, it was a common name, common first name, and it's a masculine name. And what it actually means is hail Baal, and Baal was their god of fertility. And so, you know, it's a Semitic name. It's a debate as to how it was pronounced. Hannibal, meaning Baal, the Lord is gracious. That's what it means. Baal has been gracious to me. And Baal was their high god. Baal was their god of weather and, you know, the crops and stuff like that. Because remember, they had a different prayer system going at that time. But that's what it means. It would be saying God has been good to me. You know, that would be the equivalent of his name these days. Let me see what else. Other things. His father's name was Hamilcar. He had several other brothers, and his brothers were also generals. One of his brothers was named Hasdrubal Barca and Mago Barca, and they distinguished themselves as good generals too. So, you know, the thing about it is Hannibal's younger brothers. He also had brothers who helped fight that war. When he left Spain to invade Italy, he left one of his brothers there in Spain. Hannibal was also a person who was strategic in his war fighting. He had often went to war and he had less people than the Romans did, but he was still able to win. He came there with a certain number of Carthaginians, and as you can imagine, over an 15-year period, he lost many of them. But what ended up happening was he was able to recruit some of the what they would call the savages, the rebels, the people from Gaul, because at that time, the Europeans, like the Gauls and the Germans, they were considered savages. They were considered barbarians. They were uncivilized people. These would have been the European people. These were white people. They were uncivilized. They just, you know, that was considered uncivilized. You know, the white, it's not like what you think of as now. It took a while before even the Italians of today were considered to be white. When they first got to America, they clearly didn't look white. They weren't considered white. So, but he was Roman. Hannibal was able to recruit some of those white Germanic people, some of those white, what we call in modern day French Gaul, and get some of those people to come down and help fight the wars with him. Now, the thing is about his overland travel, the journey originally planned by Hannibal's brother-in-law, Hasdrubal, okay, and he maintained the Roman he became a Carthaginian general in the Iberian Peninsula in 229. He maintained his post for 8 years until 221 BC. Soon the Romans became aware of the alliance between Carthage and the Celts of the Po Valley in northern Italy. Okay, in other words, he went over there and he said, look, I'm trying to overthrow Rome. You know what I mean? I'm trying to destroy these Romans. They've been keeping you guys oppressed. Let me help you out. And, you know, so Rome, he paid people, he talked to them, he promised them different things. He presented them with an opportunity to kill Romans. And at that time, Rome was like a tyranny. Okay. In late spring of 2018 BC, he left Carthage and he fought his way through the northern tribes to the foothills of the Pyrenees. Okay. Well, he left New Carthage, which was a place in Spain. He fought his way through the tribes because some of the tribes didn't agree with him. He left a detachment of 20,000 troops in Spain to keep the Romans from coming back and invading Spain, which is the land that they decided to keep. Hannibal reportedly entered Gaul with 40,000 foot soldiers. In other words, modern day France, he entered there with 40,000 foot soldiers and 12,000 horsemen. Hannibal recognized he still needed to cross the Pyrenees, the Alps, and many significant rivers. Additionally, he would have to contend with oppositions from the Gauls, whose territory he passed through. Starting in spring 2018, 218 BC, he crossed the Pyrenees. He reached the Rhone. Okay, he worked with the Gaulish chiefs, and they allowed him to pass. And Hannibal's army numbered 38,000 and 8,000 cavalry and 38,000 elephants. Once he got through, almost none of which would have survived the harsh conditions of the Alps, but he got them through anyway. They shouldn't have survived, but he got them through. Hannibal and his men, once they got into the Alps, imagine it's cold. They're up there, and you got these narrow passages, and people are falling off. So he managed to get through those Alps. I think it took him 4 days to cross the Alps, which is amazing that this man was able to get. Imagine getting the whole football stadium full of people walking through the Alps, along with thousands of men on horse, 8,000 men on horse, and 38 elephants along these narrow passages. This is just amazing what he was able to do. And nobody expected him to do that. Everybody thought that no major force could come through the north because they had that northern barrier up there. But they were wrong. And this is the most amazing thing. Imagine that. Nobody even, and he did it, and they didn't even, it's nothing they could do about it. Okay. So the other thing is, he eventually got into Rome. I mean, he eventually got into Italy. He linked up with some of the so-called savages. He linked up with some of the barbarians, and just basically for 15 years they just raised hell. They just raised hell. They killed everybody. The thing is, and people always ask, why did he never invade the city? Why did he never invade the Roman capital? This was a question that people ask themselves all the time. Why is it that he never invaded Rome itself? Why is that? And so this is what we have. Some say, well, because he didn't have enough people, sieges take a long time. But he could have cut off their supply lines and starved them out. But he didn't do that. And so this is where the lessons come in. Now, some quick lessons that we can learn about Hannibal Barca, General Hannibal, is, first of all, he broke all the rules, okay? So the lesson you guys should learn, if you follow all the rules, you'll be forgotten. The reason that we know Hannibal, the reason that we know him is because he did some amazing things, and he did things because he broke rules. Now, in your personal life, or even as a leader, take the initiative, keep the initiative, okay? By taking the initiative, it gave Hannibal a tremendous advantage. His enemies had to constantly try to guess his intention and defend themselves against several alternative attacks. They didn't know what he was going to do, right? So he never waited around for something to happen. He made it happen. Even when he invaded, even when he broke the Petey, he knew his war is imminent, so we're going to fight anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and take the advantage, okay? The enemy, Rome was the greatest power on earth, and they had already beat him in the Punic Wars, the First Punic War, but he forever left Rome on the defensive, waiting and wondering, guessing, and bracing themselves for the next blow, right? They constantly in a defense. They don't know what to do. There was one instance where the consul Longus was hell-bent on making Hannibal stand and fight him. And he lined his army up to battle, and Hannibal ordered his men to go back to camp. He refused to fight. At that time, he was not prepared for a general battle, so Polybus and made it a principle never to be drawn into a decisive engagement unless by deliberate choice, and certainly not in casual input. Basically, his ego might have said, yeah, I can go out here and kill these dudes, but I wasn't ready yet. So he didn't want to sacrifice his troops. So what did he do? He said, we're going back to camp. All right. Another thing, be quick. Surprise your enemies. Hannibal decamped by night from Capua and got to Rome before the Romans in Capua ever realized he was gone. He crossed the Erucia through a swamp because that was the way everyone assumed he would go. Basically, what they're telling you, he was stuck in North Italy for a little while. And the armies. He had to beat the two armies. The Roman had sent two armies to come. Two Romans armies were coming to merge, and he said, I don't want to fight them. So what did he do? He took his Romans over some more mountains that were in the north of Italy, and then through a swamp, an uninhabited swamp. He lost his eye in that swamp. It was some of his men, their feet were rotten because of swamp rot. Okay, because once your feet are wet for a long time, whatever. But he got him through it. Nobody expected him to do that, and he did it. So he was quick. He surprised them. Bam! This guy was full of it. He was full of tricks. They just didn't know what to expect from him. I mean, he's like the Muhammad Ali of generals. Like, you never know what was coming from. He was not orthodox. Be crafty. Lay a trap. That's another thing. Hannibal's plans were always ways of fooling his enemy, misleading him, enticing him into combat, surprising him with hidden forces, seeming to be somewhere else. Everyone remember the way he got out of the difficult pass in Campania, which was with Fabius's army all around him. Okay, so basically what happened in that path, he was surrounded. He had two armies, one in front of him, one on the side, one on behind, nowhere for him to go. And so what he did was, instead of waiting there for them to attack him, he got 2,000 oxen together, 2,000 cows, basically, oxen, tied torches around their horns at night, right? It's caused the horses to stampede, right, at night. So what does it look like? It looks like if you got 2,000, it looks like you got 4,000 troops running at you with torches. That's what it looks like. And so as they created that diversion, he had his guys run behind the cows, run behind the stampeding oxen, and they escaped out of the valley. And they were like, how did he even get out of here? But that's how he tricked them. I mean, he had like ninja ability. How do you escape? How do you get 20, 40,000 guys out of a trap in the middle of the night? You know, be flexible. But that's what he did. Be flexible, have a plan, but be able to alter it or even drop it as circumstances change. So here's the thing that a lot of us do. We keep doing the same thing over and over again, as if we're going to get a different result. We just going to stick to this plan. I'm going to pay this house off. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to stay at this job. I'm going to stay here. This is my job. And your job is not paying you anything. It's not doing you. It's a bad plan to stay there. Same thing with relationships. Not that I want to, love and war, same thing. But the bottom line is be flexible, have a plan, be able to alter it or even drop it if the circumstances change. It's okay with changing your mind if the facts change. See, bad generals believe that they will one day meet the enemy squarely on the field and have a nice pitched battle, right? You're going to meet your enemy head up. Those generals toy in their minds with troop dispositions, where to put their cavalry, where to stand their light armed soldiers, how deep to build their phalanx, and so on. That will be the decisive day, they tell themselves, and hope for good luck. Okay, but for Hannibal, on the other hand, every day was a decisive day. Every day was that decisive day. The great battle was now. It was always going on. He didn't merely march until he came to a perfect situation for battle. He created the situation or took advantage of one. He was stubborn only about his objective, not about his means of getting that objective. Okay, he was at every moment aware of his advantages and disadvantages in his own. So here's what I'm saying, right? You know what your objective. Don't allow the means by which you achieve your objective get in the way of objective. I had a client years back. My client's dad died. He had a brother. Well, the client had a brother, two brothers. I think they were called the Bennett boys. And they were upset because their father had left an insurance policy to their girlfriend and didn't leave them anything. And the one of them said, well, went on a fishing trip and he promised he was going to put my name on. This is in New Orleans. I was probably I've been practicing law for 4 years at the time. Bennett boys. And I said, look, the day they came off, I said, look, this insurance policy is in this woman's name. There's not a whole lot I can do for you because it's in her name. She's supposed to get it all, but I can file suit. I can try to get you by $10,000. That's about it. When I get that, I'll let you know. That's the objective. Now, once it got heated, once they start feeling like, once they saw that I was able to get some money, they thought I could get all the money. And I'm like, that's not going to happen, sir. That's not going to happen. I'm not. Contract says she's supposed to get the money if your daddy died. If your daddy had changed the contract like he said he was going to do on the fishing trip, you wouldn't have this problem. Either way, they didn't listen. So they fired me. They decided to represent themselves. They got to court. The judge said, look, sir, this lawyer back there got you $10,000. This woman here who's your daddy's girlfriend, you can't be mad at her. Be mad at your daddy. But see, remember, the objective was to get him $10,000. But they got mad. Now they didn't want, it's not that they wanted money. They wanted her not to get any money. See, they inherited their mama's mentality. Instead of taking the money that was the objective, you know. So I got them their objective. I got that. Then what? They wanted something else. So, you know, focus on your objective. Be dogged about your objective. Don't worry about how you get there. Now, some people say, man, you filed suit on that and you knew you weren't going to get it. Well, I did it because that was the objective. But see, some people can't change. Some people get so caught up into the means by how they achieve something that it's a problem. You know, if I don't get it like this, I don't want it. You stupid. Hannibal said, look, I'm gonna get it how this is my objective. It don't matter how I go about getting it. This is him. This is the brilliance of this man. He was at every moment aware of his advantages and disadvantages. You see? So he knew his limitations. He knew his strengths. Great. Here's another one. Fight for tomorrow as well as today. Think 2 steps ahead, not just one. Some of you guys, man, just 1 step ahead. You know, and you got other people that's 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of you. That's why you can't win. Understand your enemy. Learn his weaknesses. Hannibal always sent out spies to learn the enemy's plans. He interviewed prisoners and guides to get information. As soon as the new Roman consuls were given command, Hannibal sent informers to find out who they were. He wanted to know whether the new general was a hothead or whether he had ever led troops into battle, what the result had been, whether he was cocky or impatient, whether he liked to drink, or was he in any other way intemperate or undisciplined. Here's the crazy thing. Anytime I get a new case, I always Google opposing counsel. I want to know everything about what college they went to. I'll figure out what, what their reports are like online, all these different things, because I want to know. In any battle, it's a battle of personalities. If you figure out the personality of the person in front of you, you'll know pretty much how you can handle it. If you're dealing with an arrogant person, you know, all you got to do is push them and prod them, and they're going to react emotionally. You see? Oftentimes, we as Black people complain about racism, but I use racism against them. You know, I'm the Black dude. I'm the Black lawyer. The last thing they want to do is lose against the Black lawyer. So what do? I make it so difficult for them. I get them to the point where they realize I have the advantage. And it makes them say, damn, I might lose to this Black lawyer. Because remember, at the end of the day, their racism and their bigotry tells them they're supposed to be better than me. So if they lose to their lawyer, they lose to the Black lawyer. What does that mean? Well, that just crushes their little spirit. Amen. Right? So I use that and it causes for them to want to settle. And it causes for them to want to give me as much money as I would get at a jury trial, because they would rather sacrifice their client's bank account than lose to the Black guy, right? That's that arrogance, that's that vanity. And so I use that against them. That's how I use white supremacy racism against a lot of my adversaries. It's there to be used, so I use it. After Hannibal had beaten his first consuls, along came another one called, well, you know, he just kept beating them back to back. Here's another thing. Be daring, okay? In other words, be bold, be daring. Don't be afraid. Come down with your, look what the man did. The man came down with elephants. The man brought elephants from North Africa all the way to Italy, the long way, okay? He crossed the Alps with elephants and attacked Rome on Roman ground. He didn't attack a province. He didn't go up to Gaul. He didn't go to Britannia. He didn't go to Germany. He attacked Rome, and he attacked Roman in his heart. Roman in his heart. Ain't that something? Only thing they could, and look, the only way they could, for 15 years, all they did was steal and take people's stuff and keep fighting. Here's another thing: keep your mouth shut. Hannibal never told anybody what he was doing. He never told his plans. He never told anybody what it was. Nobody knew what he was doing. He kept it secret. He kept it secret. You know, the only way you can keep a secret between two people is to kill one. Have you ever heard that old saying? The only way you can keep a secret between two people is kill one of them, right? So he never told anybody anything. This is Hannibal Barca. This is our great general. Here's another one. Be everything I told you, and be prudent. Be you know, don't but also be intelligent. You see? Now, it's interesting, right? It's interesting that this great general has withstood the test of time. Now, we learned a little bit about his facts. Now, I want to give you a couple of quotes from him. Let me pull it up. One quote from Hannibal is, "I will either find a way or I will make one." This is this man's mentality. I will find a way. What if all you black brothers out there had that mentality? I will either find a way or I will make one. Can you imagine who you would be if this is the mentality that you inherit? I liken myself to this. This is how I am. This is what Hannibal said. I will either find a way or I will make one. Beautiful, right? What does that tell you about this man? This is alpha male on steroids. Many things which nature makes difficult become easy to man who uses his brains. Look at that. Many things, he didn't believe in obstacles. The mirrors in your mind can reflect the best of yourself, not the worst of someone else. Think about that. This is what this great general said, this great warfighter. The mirrors in your mind can reflect the best of yourself, not the worst of someone else. Think about that. Think about that. Perception is a tool that points on both ends. Perception is a tool that's pointed on both ends. In other words, it sticks both ways. Now, here's what I want you to understand. A lot of us don't understand why Rome, because see, as I told you guys, Hannibal Barca basically roamed around Rome for 15 years, and nobody understood why he never actually just went in here and destroyed the city of Rome. Why didn't he do that? People are like, man, life would have been just so much easier had he just destroyed Rome, right? Right? I think this quote right here tells it all, in my opinion. I am not carrying on a war of extermination against the Romans. I am contending for honor and empire. My ancestors yielded to Roman valor. I am endeavoring that others in their turn will be obliged to yield to my good fortune and my valor. Hannibal. Basically, what this man is saying is, I'm not trying to exterminate these Romans. I'm just trying to embarrass them. They made us yield to them in the First Punic War. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my guys around Italy, and I'm going to massacre and beat and destroy all of their armies, and show them what their place truly is. This is and show that and make them bow down to me. I want them to bow down to my valor, to my good fortune. This is what his whole point was. I don't think he ever had any intention on invading Rome or destroying Rome or making Rome some sort of province of Carthage. I don't think logistically it was possible. Now, of course, the Romans had a different philosophy about war. They were more into, kill, burn, destroy everything. But the bottom line is, this is where he was. This was, I believe truly, he attained his objective. He wanted to go down in history as the general who struck fear into these big bad Romans. I think this what he served his purpose. This is what he did. This is what he wanted his valor back. His daddy told him what? Don't ever make them your friend. Look what they did to us. They humiliated us. It was a vendetta. And so he took 40,000 men, 40,000 North Africans across the Iber Peninsula up through up through the Alps, down into the Iberian, down into Italy, and he raised hell for 15 years. This is what he did for valor, for his name, for his honor, this for his country. This is what he did. Here's another one that he says. So I think that's the answer to who we're dealing with. Here's another one that Hannibal said. This is another quote from this brilliant man. It's not what you appreciate. It's that you appreciate. In other words, it's not what you like. It's that you have the ability to like something. It's not what you can appreciate. It's that you have the ability to appreciate something. Here's another one. You want to know how he felt about God. Interesting, right? I notice a lot of these military guys, these great warriors, have very interesting feelings about God. He said killing must feel good to God too. He does it all the time. Did God feel good about that? He felt powerful. The power of life and death. It's godlike. Interesting. How did he feel about human beings? Here's another quote from Hannibal, right? Dogs keep a promise a person can't. Loyalty, probably. And this is another thing. He was very serious about loyalty, okay? He was dedicated. Loyalty was his thing. This is what drove this man. So he said a dog can keep a promise that people can't, and that is loyalty and trustworthiness. Here's another one. Words are living things. They have personality, point of view, an agenda. Hannibal. So he's mindful of his words. I'm going to read this other one. I want you guys to check this out. God has given to man no sharper spur to victory than contempt of death. There is a book by a great general, Sun Tzu, and he talks about the killing ground. The killing ground being a place where there's nowhere else to go. Either you fight for it or you die here today. And so you want your guys, when it's time to fight, God has given man no sharper spur to victory. And a spur is something that you would stick into the side of a horse and get him to go forward faster. There's no sharper spur to victory than the contempt of death. I refuse to die. You see? Beautiful. This is a beautiful and brilliant man that we need to study. Okay? And so either way, again, I think I told you guys he lost his eye in that swamp after the Battle of Trivia. And so he had a patch. There's some nice photographs here I have of him that I wanted to share with you guys. This is Hannibal, an artist's rendition of him crossing the Alps with his elephants. And this is what we should talk about, brothers. This is beautiful. I learned about Hannibal many years ago. I think I was maybe 14 or 15 years old. And, I think that all of us, right? All of us need to have a healthy understanding of African history, especially these great generals like Hannibal and so many others. We know about Shaka Zulu, many of us, but Shaka was basically a warlord, a tribal chief. This man had a mechanized army, okay? Not taking anything away from the great King Shaka Zulu, but this is a different kind of army. Join conversation. Does anybody have anything else they want to add to this conversation since we're talking about Hannibal? Please come on in. The link is in the chat room. I want you guys to come in and let's talk about the great General Hannibal. Anything you guys want to add? And one thing, because I know there's probably people who are saying, well, you know, Hannibal's blah, blah, blah. Was he black? Blah, blah, blah. Get it out. There's oftentimes what happens is folks like to claim our heroes. You know, they like to, especially our great ones, the idea that, you know, the Roman Empire, which were non-white people themselves, were overrun by some Africans, especially when, you know, many whites kind of see Rome as the seat of Western civilization. They're offended that an African man had done that, so they do everything they can to try to take our dude away from us, you know. And so he was, but he definitely was not. One conclusion. So I'm going to hear some of this, and then we'll, if I can, well, let me see here. Oh, that's not coming up. Oh, never mind. Imperialism. Anyway, oops. Malika, how you doing, my man?
Peace, good brother. How you doing today?
I'm good, man. What do you think about this conversation? Change up from normal stuff we talked about on this page, right? I think it's good, though.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Definitely is good. It's great. Hannibal is one of my favorites.
What do you think we could learn from Hannibal? I gave some pointers. What can we learn as black men from Hannibal and use in our own life?
To think strongly, to think like a general, not in a martial or a warlike situation, but just to think and move ahead and navigate through life. One of the points I like when you said be bold and daring and take risks.
Yeah.
A lot of times black men, we're conditioned to play it safe. Whereas our Latino, Asian, white, Indian, Middle Eastern, their males are trained from birth to take risks. They're trained to fight life like a general, like Hannibal.
So we got a guy here, his name is Boxing Logics United. He said Romans was not black. Okay, so here's the thing, Boxing's, and I apologize, Malika, but I got to deal with this. So here's the thing. When you're dealing with that time period, there were what we call Africans, dark-skinned people, sub-Saharan Africans, people, Ethiopian, all throughout the Mediterranean. Okay, they were all throughout there. And I'm going to give this to Boxing Logics United. There's a link in the chat room, and it basically points out that none of those people in the Mediterranean were what we consider white. None of them were German. None of them were Northern, Scandinavian. None of them were what you would consider white Europeans. They were all of color. They were definitely blacker than anybody that has been the president other than Barack Obama. Okay, so they were all mixed. They probably looked like myself and Malika, many of them. They were mixed. It was thousands of years of intermingling, intermixing. So they were definitely of some African descent, period. You know, whether to what degree, I'm sure the closer and closer you get to Central Africa, the darker the people are. But the bottom line is they were of African descent, many of them. They were intermixed. People were everywhere. You know, so the Romans, and they had Roman generals who were of African, Roman people in the they definitely weren't white. They weren't Scottish. They weren't British. Those were considered those were the savages. Those were the barbarians. Those were the people that were being sold into slavery. They were being captured by Caesar, enslaved. That's how he made his money, capturing white Germanic slaves and selling them throughout the known world. This is what they did. So, you know, at that time, the Europeans, as we call them, were just, you know, they were just the barbarians, you know, and they were up there to be tamed. So, you know, it is what it is. Well, go ahead, Malika. And you guys, if you appreciate this conversation, please continue to contribute to the Super Chat, the Cash App, and the PayPal. All right, but go ahead, Malika.
Two things that, well, three things I should say that stood out too. Have contingencies, must have a plan and objective, know your strengths and weaknesses, but also know your enemy's strengths and weaknesses. And this is not just for fighting in war. This is just for fighting and getting ahead. Like you explained, you being an African-American lawyer. And if you're going against other lawyers of another race, you know, in their mind, they see a black lawyer, but then they've been mentally prepared to say, don't you dare lose against this black lawyer. So you have to study your opponent. You know, you play chess, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, when I first learned to play chess, I learned in prison, but I learned from a guy that was very, very aggressive. And he came in like he came in fighting like Tyson. But then also I learned with an older gentleman who sat and studied, and he said, you're not just studying the board, you're studying your opponent, and you're studying how the way they move. And he said, and that's what the whole idea is. And that's this life, you know, life is a battlefield. And Hannibal took his time and he studied and he had contingencies, but also he was willing to adapt. Black men, we got to learn how to adapt. You got to learn how to adapt and deal with technology. You got to learn how to adapt and deal with policies and political situations. All last month, you were teaching us how to adapt, Dennis. You were telling us as men, if you want to be men about time, or if you want to be men, you have to know how to adapt. Like you were saying today and yesterday, we rather be liked than respected.
Yeah.
Hannibal didn't care, like the part where you said he didn't care about monopolizing power like Alexander the Great.
Right.
He rather make those people, meaning the European people in Rome, feel embarrassed, and you bow to your knee and you respect me because you disrespected my Carthaginian legacy.
Yeah.
And that is bigger than just getting power. It's about having respect for your legacy. You might not like me, but I got to bow to a knee and respect him that he fought. And he fought, but he did it with ingenuity. Because like that old saying, when Alexander the Great stood on a mountaintop, he wept because there was nothing else for him to conquer.
Right. These are,
you know, but then a man is like, okay, you're weeping because there's nothing left for you to conquer. That to me, that was kind of like some weak stuff. But then when, like you said, Hannibal, it's not about conquering, but then you gotta understand our white counterparts, that's what is in them. For us, it's not about conquering, it's about honoring your legacy. Your legacy will last longer than you conquering some land. His legacy was more important, the respect of who he is. And that's why his name goes down in more infamy than Alexander the Great. And we might have a whole lot of opposition if we were talking with a bunch of other different people.
Well, hold on. We got another one here. All white boxing logistics says all white people aren't the same complexion. Some are paler than others, of course, due to geography, but they were definitely European. No, they weren't. They weren't. They weren't European. No matter how much you want them to be European Boxing Logistics United, they weren't. Okay, period. They just weren't European. The Scandinavians are the Europeans. Those are the white people. Okay, everybody else is an admixture. All right, the Scandinavians and then the Russians and the Germans. They all came down there from the North Atlantic. All right, they're not white. Period. And and the Mediterranean, Italy, Sicily. If you go there now, even the people that are now, when they first came to the United States, they weren't white. There wasn't even such a thing as white at that time. They didn't categorize themselves by their perceived color. They talked about where they were from. They talked about their lineage. They didn't talk about the color of their skin. And so this white thing, this white-black concept is relatively new. You could have been Ethiopian. You could have been Numidian. You could have been, you could have been these, but you weren't white. This is new. And so they weren't white. So you trying to categorize them as white, it's like trying to call a dinosaur ancestors of a bird. There weren't any birds. You're mixing stuff up in there. These were European people. Think about it. Have you been to the Mediterranean? You know how hot it gets down there. You know what you would look like after a couple of years living, in one of those countries. You'd be darker, much darker. So they weren't white, and it's a lot of black people that are so hell bent on, look, let me just say it again. These people have been intermixing with each other for thousands of years. Carthage, North Africa, Egypt, all these people have been, that Mediterranean pot, they were all mixing in. So the Romans were not white. They weren't. They just weren't. Matter of fact, again, they considered the white people savages. White was a sign of sickness or savagery. Okay, they didn't like pants. Okay, all right. I'm telling you, the Gaul, the Germanic,
and they didn't bathe.
Yeah, that Gaul and Britannia and Germania. Those were the savages.
Celts.
Those were the savages. Those are the white people. Okay, not the Mediterranean people. All right, but go ahead, brother.
Another thing, stay 10 steps ahead of the other man, and also learn everything to get ahead to win.
Right. Yeah.
What you're telling us and using Hannibal Barca as a template for modern day living and modern day thinking and modern day just getting ahead for us black men.
Right. Do you think Hannibal would have cared what the women of his tribe, the lovely ladies, had to say?
Say that again. Come on, man.
You think Hannibal would?
Come on, man.
You think that Hannibal would have said,
bro.
I don't want y'all going over there. Y'all just trying to get over there to get with some of them Italian women. That's all y'all trying to do is travel over there, mess with those Italians. Stay right here in Carthage. You think Hannibal would allow this great black general would have allowed the lovely ladies to dictate to him where he should come and go?
It wouldn't be dead, brother. Come on.
Oh my God. Right.
But you know what? You have to understand something, man.
Yeah.
This was a time where women knew their place. There wasn't any free reign of allowing a woman to tell a man what to do. This was the Carthaginians were a strong warring tribe of men, people. A woman going to part her lips to say anything to what a man should do. What?
Well, I'm sure they still had women that would say stuff, but the question is it's not whether or not they're gonna say, it's whether or not you're gonna listen to that.
Exactly.
It's like, my thing is because you still got men that'll tell you the same thing. So it's not even tell you that, try to fill you up with that weak sauce. You see what I'm saying? So I say all that to say Hannibal felt like the world belonged to him, which is the same thing I tell you guys. The world belongs to you. This whole world belongs to you. You're not limited by your where you were born, who you were born to, what language you speak, what happened 500 years ago. You are who you are right now. This whole world belongs to you, and I hope you brothers will realize that, begin to exercise your right to subdue the earth, or at least travel the earth. This is my hope, and see what's out there. Jeff Riley, thank you, Malika. I appreciate that. Look, you guys appreciate this conversation. Make sure you contribute to the Super Chat, Cash App, and the PayPal. I'm sure you all would much rather talk about, I don't know, Brokeback Cowboy. What's his name?
Nas X.
His boy's name, Nas X. Little Nas. I'm sure y'all much rather talk about him or Kim Kardashian or something like that. But, you know, because they usually, that's, you know, and I'll cull some lessons out of stuff like that too. But I think for your development, you know, just like the conversation we had yesterday, where we talked about Job as Black men, right? We need these conversations because many of us didn't get these conversations as young men, you see. But the thing is, maybe you didn't have a father figure. Maybe you didn't have that strong mentor, but you do have Hannibal, you see, Barca, right? You do have him. You do have so many other great African men who stood up and who are renowned throughout the world. So let's not be so stuck in the recent past that we don't take the lessons that history has to teach us about the great accomplishments of our brethren. So again, if you appreciate the conversation, make sure you contribute to the Super Chat, the Cash App, and the PayPal. All right. Jeff, really, what do you want to add to this thing, man?
Man, I think the story of Hannibal, this story was so powerful for me because when I first started searching about Black people, I didn't go to slavery. And when I did go to Africa, I came to find out that this was like the battle that caused everything to fall for Africa. And when I found out that Hannibal was actually a Black general, and that Carthage was pretty much the America of its time, Rome wasn't that supreme Rome at that time until they stopped Carthage. Like, I found so much power in that story, not only in Hannibal, but that's when you found out that Africa was a crazy great nation. And I went further and further back from there, and the story was just empowering. You don't want to hear anything about slavery or anything. Once you know this story alone, it's just like, damn, where we came from to where we at, we can get back there.
Yeah, and the thing is about slavery, everybody had slaves in ancient times. That was just part and parcel. That's what they did. I mean, and here's the crazy thing: the Arab slave trade predates the European slave trade by about 1,400 years.
Right.
And so this is new. Africans had slaves. People in the Mediterranean had slaves. Slaves were everywhere. So don't let them label you with that slave. Matter of fact, as I said earlier, the Germanic people, the modern day Germans, the Britannians, the Britons, they were slaves. They were the slaves of the Roman Empire. Right. The French, what we call Gaul, they were the slaves. They were being traded about. Slaves were just slaves. You get traded about here and there. You see what I mean? So what I'm trying to say, don't let them pin that label on you, brothers. Don't let them. African history does not start in 1619. It predates that. I say 80,000 years back. Yeah. It's only for the past 500 years that we've even been dealing with white supremacy racism. Before that, remember, they were the ones that the Europeans, what we call Europeans, and I'm not even talking about the Southern Europeans. I'm talking about the Northern Europeans. I'm talking about the French, the British, the Scandinavians. They were the slaves.
Right. They couldn't even.
See, they were the ones who were having their lands invaded and whatnot. Everybody else was, doing what they did. But they realized we better start, trying to get together instead of fighting each other and try to take over some of this land. And they've been in charge for the past 500 years. But we had 80,000 years.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So let's study that 80,000 years of history and consider this just a little blip on the radar and move forward. But either way, what else did you learn from our conversation tonight Jeff, what else have you picked up from Hannibal that you didn't know? Like the fact that he lost his eye. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
You know?
it was a few specific things in that reading. A lot of things, just learning about Carthage itself and the technology that they had. And like you said, specifically when he started climbing through the mountains, and there was something at the end of the story when he finally got over to Rome, he was tearing them up. And
Yeah.
I think they only got him by by a narrow amount, because he was really about to win over there. And
well, he did what? I mean, for 15 years he roamed this peninsula, this Italian peninsula, just killing them and fighting all their armies and just having them afraid and all that sort of stuff. And the thing is, the only reason he left is when Siccio, what's his name? Siphius Africanus. What was his name?
Africanus.
Yeah, he decided, well, you know what, we got to go fight. Only way we're going to get him out of here, he has no objective. He just wants to be over here embarrassing us. Right. So we're going to go attack his homeland and make him leave. That's the only way. In other words, it's like the gangsters say, if I can't find you, I'm going to go shoot up your mama house, and then you're going to find me. That's basically what happened. But I just want you guys to see what these mountains look like, just so you guys can see. This is what this is and if I can get it to pull up real quick, I'll see. Yep. Oops,
his father was also a great man. Like, if you look at the history of his father was a general also before him, right? Then he fought the First Punic War. Well, he was the major general of the first, something like that.
Like father, like son.
And he was mad. He was like, don't ever become friends with them. And he took his daddy's word, like, all right, daddy, I got you. And so he was going back there to get his father's honor back. You see, he wasn't going there to just overtake Rome. He was going there to get his father's honor back. But this is what the Alps look like, fellas. This black general crossed the Alps. And this is what the Alps, if I can get this thing going in here. Hold on a minute. Hold on. Yeah, man. If it'll come up in a minute. Oh, man. I can't get this thing to pop up. Let me see. Either way, I'll get it in a minute. But just Google the Alps. You'll see what it looks like. It's just not the elephant. How do you get an elephant? But go ahead, Malika. What else would you like to add to this conversation?
Man, didn't quit. Didn't quit. Had unshakable confidence.
That's true. Yeah.
A lot of times, man, we quit too much, man. Soon as it gets tough, soon as it is as a trial and tribulation comes, man, we throw up our hands and go, oh, it ain't meant for me. Or like how you said, we have a wife or a woman like Job's first wife in our ear telling us what we need to do. You need to do this. You need to do that. You quit. And also we'll do something to quit, or we'll try to do something to fit into another person's cookie cutter lifestyle. Something that you said, his father told him. His father specifically, explicitly told him, and he followed what his father said. And that's where you could tell the transference of masculine energy to focus and have his son to be a great man. And he did it. And it wasn't just fulfilling what his father wanted. It was fulfilling the legacy of him being a Carthaginian. And not just a Carthaginian, but a general for the Carthaginian army. And that's the thing where he knew what his legacy, and he knew what his dynasty, and he knew what his goal was. A lot of times, black men, we don't know that because it hasn't been set for us. We're just here to serve and do what we got to do, and hopefully we get a good job, and by the age of 65, we can retire and have a nice pension and just chill out and watch the game on Sunday.
And
Guys,
like
the
another thing. Go ahead.
That's what. Can you guys see that photo?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see it.
Can everybody see that photograph? So that's a photograph of the Alps in the wintertime. That's what Hannibal crossed. Miles and miles of that. That's what he did with elephants. Look at these little people right here. See these little folks right here? They didn't have any thermal super, space suits and nothing like that. They basically crossed that. This is what they did. And nobody expected to see them. You got to have a hell of a willpower to do that, man. You got to be a hell of a general to do that. But either way, you guys make sure you contribute to the Super Chat, the Cash App, and the PayPal. Go ahead and do that now. I don't want to take any more breaks. I want to keep this conversation going. Alexis, welcome to the conversation. What would you like to add to this conversation about Hannibal?
Good evening, Unc and brothers. For me, Hannibal is my favorite general of all time through the antiquities. So me and you share a lot of similar interests as far as with generals and just understanding great black men. But for me, Hannibal was more of a master of psychological warfare and understanding the man. And then once I understand the man, it doesn't matter how many people I have under my wing and how many you have that you think you can, envelop me with. I'll always win because I know you. I know your weaknesses. I know you in and out. So I don't know if you mentioned this earlier, but with the consuls, with the general, there were usually two of them at the helm. So what he would do is he would find the intel of which general he was going up against. So if it was the hothead, he knew he had to bait him into the battle. And if it was the calmer one, he knew he had to be more aggressive. So this man knew and understand psychological warfare before everyone else. He was ahead of the game, I'd say a millennia before anybody else.
Yeah. I appreciate that. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, John Guillory. I appreciate your contribution to the Super Chat. We still haven't got anybody contributing to the Cash App. I guess the Cash App is dry tonight. But either way, Jeff, what else you'd like to say to everybody here about this? What else can we learn from and apply in our day-to-day life about that we get from Hannibal?
Not so much a Hannibal, but I realized that after this war was when things collapsed because there was a lot of hope lost, and this is what brought us into losing our spiritual base and what was ours because we were being taxed so heavy. This is when we got intimidated because people were on our lands. So I guess just like the consequences of having situations, turn south and go left, and what not to do, what not to give into, just remembering to be strong because before we didn't know, we didn't really know loss, but now we know, and we still going through things like that today, and we a different set of people. I think it bears reminding us, what our ancestors went through, so we'll never wear that same pain, All
right. I appreciate that. Malika, what else you got to say on this subject about Hannibal, the great general from antiquity, from Carthage?
He's a great example for us to think, to utilize what we have to think, to maneuver, and use his methods and use his ideologies to think, to maneuver, to this is a different type of battlefield that we have. And the first battlefield we need to maneuver is the one in our own minds, and we got to overcome the enemy with it ourselves.
Yeah.
But also, after we learn how to do that, we need to also use this military tactician and, like the other brother said, psychological warfare to maneuver through life with everything to become the best versions of ourselves, not to sound cliche with that, but you know, just to be the best, and how the way you've been teaching us for the past few months of how the way you build yourself inside out. Hannibal had the advantage of having a father that was a general who conditioned him and his brothers to be great men. You know, like you're conditioning your sons to be a great man like yourself and like Hannibal.
Well,
And
I hope I'm conditioning them to be better men than me, and I hope they take the best parts of me and they incorporate that into their life, and then the other men that they're around that are great, I hope they take those parts. That's the only thing I can hope for. But go ahead, brother. All praises go to the Most High.
and that's just one thing of just learning. And I learned from Hannibal in the past and other great generals. It's a thinking game. And I refer to back to chess. It's about thinking. It's not just overrunning how the way Alexander the Great did, just overrun and take. And not saying he didn't have a strong analytical mind as a general either, but it's not about just overthrowing and taking over. It's about building your legacy. It's about building for your next generation.
Yeah.
See, we're revering, respecting a man thousands of years ago for what his great accomplishment was. It wasn't just about taking over a land and killing a bunch of people. He was fulfilling a purpose to have a legacy and a destiny. And that's one thing I think, and what you're teaching us to do.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I implore you all to check out Hannibal Barca, great African warrior, on the History Channel. It's there for you guys to see. This is a great African general. And the way we keep our ancestors alive is by continuing to speak their name. Hannibal did some amazing things in his life. More importantly, he was a victor. He was never a victim. He avenged his country, he avenged his nation by bringing Rome to its knees. For 15 years, he roamed around Rome, the Italian peninsula, destroying all of their armies, anyone they threw at him, whatever trick they had. Other things Hannibal did was he got the help from other people, allies. The Gauls, the Germanic people, anybody who had a beef with Rome, who was being oppressed by Rome, he joined in with them. He let them join in with him. He utilized them. He was always willing to change his strategy, but he never changed his goal. He never changed his objective. He stayed focused. It was to do what? Regain his valor, regain the valor of his father, who had lost the First Punic War. Basically vengeance, but not just a long, prolonged vengeance. Basically a whole generation of people in Rome, 2 generations grew up under the sword of fear of this African general who is roaming about their land. This gave nightmares to the citizens and the children of Rome. This is what he did to them. There is no way, as great as Rome is supposed to be, as great as Rome was throughout history, they always have their Hannibal Barca. And so you guys remember that. And remember, he lost the first war. Carthage lost the Punic War, the First Punic War. But this second one, you can call it a loss if you want to, but if somebody's able to run all over you for 15 years and there's nothing you can do about it, that's a humbling experience. So the great Hannibal Barca brought this great empire to its knees. And it all started with him. He was the one that had his plan. He was the one that had his objective. This was a one man that had an objective, and he went forth into the world and he conquered his enemy. He brought his enemy to his knees. So I thank you guys for joining in this conversation. I think it's been good. I hope that you guys found this enriching. I like talking about things like this. I hope you guys appreciate it. If you appreciate what I'm doing, make sure you contribute to the Super Chat, the Cash App, and the PayPal. I'd like to thank Malika, R. Alexis, and Jeff Kelly for joining in tonight. This is Uncle D, and I'm out.